Today, I want to talk about how new data reveals that the AMC float is held at least 10 times over. I also want to talk about an important change for Gamestop that allows Ryan Cohen to talk a lot more about what's currently going on. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And now I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, we can see that Unusual Wells has tweeted saying that Gamestop has just announced a new 8K filing. In that filing, they've said they've issued an irrevocable notice to terminate the $250 million credit facility under the credit agreement, effective August 27th. It says the company's principal source of liquidity will now be cash from operations and cash on hand. So that means Gamestop is no longer reliant on the banks for funding. So let me explain why this is so important. And not only explain why it's important, but why it's a massive change for GameStop and allows Ryan Cohen to talk a lot more about what's currently going on. So I want to cast your mind back to a few videos ago where I spoke about this video of Elon Musk. This is where Elon Musk admits that he was effectively forced to lie under oath by the banks about Tesla. Elon Musk had secured funding and was ready to take Tesla private. But the banks forced him to admit to the SEC that he didn't have funding and effectively forced him to be fined by the SEC. They said if he didn't admit wrongdoing, if he didn't allow the SEC to fine him, and if he didn't pay the SEC fine, the banks would simply withdraw funding, killing Tesla in a matter of 24 hours. If the banks withdrew their funding, Tesla wouldn't be able to continue and it would have gone under and collapsed within hours. So even though Elon Musk had actually done nothing wrong and even had the facts and information to prove that, the banks still forced him to do what they wanted, which was to settle with the SEC. Now, in my previous video, I also touched on the possibility that Adam Aron had effectively been silenced by these same banks. AMC is obviously very reliant on the banks and their funding, both for day-to-day operations and for the loans they've given. Without those loans, AMC would collapse within hours. This way, the banks effectively have control over AMC and Adam Aron, and effectively the banks can make Adam Aron say whatever they want him to say. If Adam Aron says the wrong thing, the banks withdraw funding and AMC's gone within 24 hours. So obviously, here we can see both Elon Musk and Adam Aron are very susceptible and very vulnerable to the banks. But someone that isn't susceptible and isn't vulnerable to the banks anymore is now Ryan Cohen and GameStop. And that's because GameStop have just terminated the $250 million credit facility and is now no longer relying on these banks. And therefore, Ryan Cohen can say, as of 2 days ago, whatever he likes because the banks don't control GameStop any longer. So maybe in the coming days and the coming weeks, we'll hear more from Ryan Cohen about what's really going on with the shorting against GameStop. I also wanted to go through Mumu's newest and best promotional offer ever. Right now, you can currently get up to 20 free stocks and a whopping 8.1% interest on uninvested cash. If you join and deposit $100, you can currently get 8 free stocks, and if you deposit $1,000, you can get the full 20 stocks. And right now it's currently a 5.1% interest rate with a boosted 3% interest on top of that for the first 3 months. As you can see here, Mumu also has a heat map showing the performance of all of the different sectors of stocks in the S&P 500 and individual stocks within those sectors as well. It also has an earnings calendar showing the upcoming earnings releases of all of the companies today, tomorrow, this week and next week, and also the performance of previous earnings releases as well. And you can see it also has tons of information on all of these stocks like level 2 data, short sale analysis, and tons more key information. So guys, be sure to join Mumu right now using the link in the description below. Now, on top of that, Stefan has also tweeted saying in Sweden, brokers publish stats on the number of AMC shareholders. And he said if each owner, on average, holds the same number of AMC shares as him, Sweden alone would own half of the float. So that's not including UK holders, not including US holders, not including other European holders or Asian holders or anywhere else. Just Sweden alone would own half the float. And that's only taking the number of Swedish AMC shareholders directly from their brokers. He says that he holds a fairly modest number of shares, a few thousand, and Sweden has a fairly small population, around 10 million people. Now, obviously, all 10 million of these obviously aren't holding AMC shares. This data is calculated just from what the brokers have published as being AMC shareholders. And again, obviously, when you factor in the American shareholders, the UK shareholders, and everyone else out there, up to the 3.8 million recently confirmed AMC shareholders, you'd have the float being held at least 10 times over. Stefan has also posted some evidence from Swedish brokers of how many shares are being held or how many shareholders there are in Sweden. He said from Avanza and from Nordnet, two of the larger brokers, there's 9,908 shareholders on Nordnet and around 16,500 shareholders on Avanza. And again, if each of those are holding just a few thousand shares each, around half the float is held just by these few shareholders. I think it's calculated that right now, based on the current AMC shareholders and the current AMC float, each shareholder needs to hold just 20 or 30 shares. And at a current share price of around $5 per share, that's only $100 to $150 worth of AMC. And obviously there's many people out there holding thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not potentially hundreds of thousands of AMC shares each. Obviously, it's been speculated on for a long time. The AMC float is held multiple times over, and the more data like this that's gathered, the more brokers that publish the number of AMC shareholders, the easier it becomes to prove. And as Retail Stocks tweeted, he said, if you don't want my word for it that AMC is not properly valued, here's the former CEO of Peloton saying that markets are broken when valuing heavily shorted companies. He said, we genuinely have a broken system and we all know why. What he tactfully calls public markets is really just command and control by a few owners of algorithms and high frequency trading machines, market makers who set the prices for stocks regardless of any supply or demand or fundamental valuations. The former CEO of Peloton even said that he has zero interest in taking a company public ever again. He said Peloton shares went from $170 per share to just $2. He said with that type of delta, I don't trust the public markets to get the pricing right. He said Peloton is at least a $40 or a $50 company from my perspective today. And he said the contract of the public markets getting a valuation right is just plain old broken. It's a shame that more and more genuine American companies and American CEOs are wising up as to what goes on in American markets, so much so to the point where they have no interest of taking companies public ever again. I think the longer this goes on for, we'll see more and more companies exile themselves from American markets and begin listing on European markets or Asian markets where synthetic short selling is much more heavily monitored and punished. Now, on top of that, Screen Time has tweeted saying that Beetle Juice 2 is tracking to earn $105 million from its domestic opening weekend, the third biggest weekend of 2024. Again, this is yet another film that's going to make the Q3 2024 box office figures the best Q3 that's ever happened, ever, pre and post pandemic. So far, the best ever year on record was back in 2013, where $2.8, nearly $2.9 billion was generated. This year in Q3, we've already generated over $2 billion. August isn't even finished yet, and there's still more data and more numbers that are to be included. Right now, we're currently on a run rate for potentially $3 billion in Q3 of 2024, the largest Q3 ever made. And as the French AMC ape has added, he said this is with several new sources of revenue on top of these box office figures, with more blockbusters to come and with more expansion en route. On top of that, AMC now has billions of dollars in cash in hand, the debt's been extended to 2029, and AMC is still raising money and raising profitability. That short thesis is dwindling and looking worse and worse by the day. At this rate, shorts may not even make it to see 2025. Retail Stocks has finally added, saying, I know the stock looks stuck, but I also know we're printing money at the box office, concessions, with merch, and with additional grocery popcorn. He said he's more confident than he's ever been that we are winning and that we will win. So guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.